Since it is Combine Week, I thought I would throw a draft one or two in here. And these are top 5 sneaky good players in this year's draft. And by sneaky good, I think these guys could be, given the right situation, day one starters, in spite of the fact that none of them will be first-round picks. And they're just really good, and they're just kind of not, they're not going to be the, Rome Odunzes of the world, but they are certainly guys that I think their skill set translates really, really well to the NFL, and they might have, for whatever reason, maybe not the biggest star on their team or in a focal point. But number 5, Renardo Green, quarterback at Florida State. If you saw how he dominated Malik Neighbors, Garrett, are you on, Mike?
Yep.
He did
dominate him. He
dominated Malik Neighbors and held everybody in check that he played all year long. One of the lowest completions percentage against for cornerbacks in this year's draft in the country. Dominated the Senior Bowl as well. Really, really good player. Again, in the right situation, he could be at least he's an outside corner more than an inside corner, but a day one starter for a team.
I thought corners were on the outside.
Well, now they have inside corners, right?
Yeah, they have boundary and
boundary
all that.
like all that. Yeah. But Renardo Green, take my word for it. And look, he's the only FSU guy on this list.
Well, I mean, hell, there's only 5 names.
Yeah, so I'm just saying.
I mean, we can't do a top 5 without something Florida State in trouble, whining, or talent.
I'm trying to grow the brand because we have trouble. Number 4,
us or Florida State.
Both. No, we're doing okay. We're doing okay. Number 4, Peyton Wilson, linebacker, NC State. This dude is so freaking fast, and he closes on running backs. He is, in my opinion, the best linebacker in the draft, but I am not a talent scout. But he is one of those guys who is always around the ball. He doesn't get beat. He's good at everything you want him to do, and he comes out of that NC State system where guys come out carved out of marble, and someone who, if you need a linebacker, Cowboys, this is a dude, especially he does remind me a lot of Leighton Vander Esch in the fact that side to side, sideline to sideline, does really, really well. And they're losing Leighton Vander Esch. He's probably not going to play anymore. If you heard Stephen Jones' comments from today, he was going to let Leighton speak on his future, which kind of means that he's going to have to retire.
Yeah.
It's going to retire, and he is someone who could step in, especially if DeMarvion Overshown, who showed out well for the Cowboys when he was playing last year early on, and I think he's got potential, is healthy. These are two guys they can build around. I think anybody who needs a linebacker should look at Peyton Wilson, and you're looking at maybe the 3rd round to get this guy, and he could start day one for you.
So it's not a Florida State homer list. It's a Cowboys and Florida State homer list.
Yeah.
It's trying to
ACC Cowboys and Florida State.
Well, listen, I'm about to throw that right out the window because you guys buckle up. I hope you brought your diapers because you're about to poo your pants. Number 3, Ricky Pearsall, wide receiver at Florida.
Wow, you did take a big step back from the homer stuff here.
I did.
The same day he complimented Tim Tebow.
I know. Ricky Pearsall
scared.
Has the best hands in the draft. He runs routes really well. He's really, really good and quick. In today's offense where you can move guys all over the field, he can play all over the field, will be really great in the slot for somebody, wins on a lot of routes, and I just also put him on the list to mention that he, Johnny Wilson, and Jaden Daniels were all on Arizona State's team under Herm Edwards and all going to get drafted this year for with different teams behind their name.
Quentin Johnston had the drop rate issues last year coming out of TCU, although a spectacular year. Now with the Rams and Chargers, but I get those two. No reason to get them mixed up just besides this. He has better hands than Marvin Harrison.
Look, I'll tell you, this guy can catch anything.
Okay.
He just can catch anything.
Yep.
He's just that good.
Yeah, he's a really good player, and I guess you could say Herm knew how to spot talent. He didn't know how to do any of the other stuff right, basically. On the field, I guess we didn't really get enough time to ultimately see what that could have turned into, but he definitely had an eye for talent, and yeah, that's the kind of recruiting you hope to get back to at some point if you're the Sun Devils. But yeah, he's a really good player. I wanted to make mention with Wilson, the prior one too. I mean, that's a guy you're looking at as your Bednarik and Butkus Award winner. I mean, that was what you saw there at the You did? Yep. Okay. Yeah. Yep. I mean, he cleaned up during awards season, so I wanted to make mention on the tail end there with that as well. But.
And look, UW fan Jim, I love Rome Odunze. I think Rome Odunze.
Love Rome Odunze.
I would take Rome Odunze over Marvin Harrison if it were me, just because I think he's just, I don't know, he's just smooth. He's
great problem to have. Yeah, you want this one or you want this one?
Yeah, but I'm like, not everybody's going to get a chance to draft those guys, and you have other needs. I'm telling you, he has the best hands in the draft. Like, if it's around him, he's going to get it. And that is something you can't really coach or teach. It's something you kind of have.
I think you're right. I think you can go to the guns machine and try to catch 1,000 balls a day or whatever, but I do think that's something either you have or you don't.
Look,
it's like an infielder. You can practice getting better, but if you're going to be like, that's an instinct. That's a talent.
It's just you have that kind of fine motor skills or whatever it is.
Big hands.
Yeah, big hands. Number 2.
Which we'll find out at the Combine here over the coming days. Yeah, exactly how big his hands are.
7 and 5/8, so that's his head.
Number 2, from mighty Rutgers, Max Melton, cornerback. Look, he is kind of the perfect Greg Schiano player in that, look, I know that Greg Schiano may not be the greatest coach in the world, but he coaches really hard-nosed defensive players and has over the history at Rutgers. And this is a guy who will get in your face, who's good getting after the ball, but he is not going to get beat on many routes. Now, is he the kind of Kool-Aid McKinstry corner or one of those guys who's maybe a little flashier? No, but I do think teams, and I'll use, the Steelers always had Rod Woodson and Carnell Lake in the secondary, and Carnell Lake wasn't really that flashy, but Rod Woodson was, and then Rod Woodson, when he went to the Raiders, became the guy who wasn't that flashy, and Charles Woodson was. You always need somebody who's like the grinder cornerback and then somebody who's the kind of stud, and he's kind of the grinder guy with some skills. I really like Max Melton. I went and I saw all these people writing about Max Melton, so I went and pulled up Max Melton highlights on YouTube, and look, he doesn't back down from anybody, and played some really good wide receivers.
I like Rutgers uniforms. I always have. I love that color scheme, like Houston,
Indiana,
almost
Oklahoma.
an OU, Oklahoma, Nebraska when they wear red.
Yeah, it's more Houston. It's not quite crimson, but no, I think Rutgers is going to be a really interesting story in the new Big Ten. Mm-hmm. Because you're looking at, you just made a bowl game for the first time in a while since Schiano came back, and I actually feel like they're kind of like the default butt of jokes sometimes in the Big Ten. And Rutgers, but they actually had a really good year or a pretty good year, and. Does that get lost in the swimming pool that grows with 4 new teams rolling into town?
They're about to have a bunch more money than they ever have before,
Very true, yeah.
So how do you decide to allocate that?
It's going to be an interesting program to kind of follow along.
I think the national championship focus, the playoff focus, there are these type of stories that will get overlooked. And successful stories, especially if they keep climbing the ladder and get a little bit better. But, man, it's just like if you're not a part of that 4, 12, or whatever, it's like there are other great stories. I hope we keep hearing about them and talking about them.
Rutgers has to be thanking God for cable television existing 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
Oh, you're right.
Otherwise, if somebody told the Big Ten, hey, it's not really about markets, it's more about who gets the actual eyes, Rutgers would not have been in that. But look, hey, that's how things were, trying to get that Big Ten network carried in more New York markets. And number 1, we go to the Big 12. An absolute road grader at guard, Dominick Puni from Kansas. And this is a dude who probably late second, early third round, I would say most experts have him projected. But if he winds up, especially if he winds up in a system like, say, the 49ers who need to draft some offensive linemen, and he would be kind of right around where their picks are, or any kind of zone team, because he's been running the zone with Andy Kotelnicki and Lance Leipold. He is a guy, I think, who can, even though not being a first rounder, can and will start day 1. He's that good.
The end of his name was a Y. That would have been really ironic, huh?
Yeah.
Dominic Puni. Yeah. But no, he's anything but. Big old dude. A great story, too, of as far as a transfer success story, being at a smaller school. And then making his way to Kansas eventually after some ups and downs, and getting the opportunity these last couple of years and has taken full advantage of it. So, great for him, and good to see KU with some presence in the draft, which is feeling like it's starting to kind of build and be very healthy with Leipold there, like everything else with that program right now. So, good to to know another Big 12 name to keep an eye on here, just as we sort of track all these different storylines. So, yeah.
Dominic Puni, thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. 5:50.